Nintendo just finished showing off the Nintendo Switch 2, and while they covered a lot during their presentation, they actually left out a bunch of details about the Switch 2, and important things like battery life, the user interface, details on how game cartridges work, and they even left out the pre-order date and the pricing for the console. So for this video, I want to tell you all the things that Nintendo left out of their Nintendo Switch presentation, and that all starts with the games, or the game key cards. You see, one thing that Nintendo left out was that not all of these physical game cartridges are going to be made the same way. So what Nintendo is doing is they're actually giving us two cartridge types. The first cartridge type is basically how you can play games on your Switch right now. You walk into a store, you buy a game, you put the cartridge into your Switch, and you can start playing right away, no downloads or anything like that. However, there is a second version of this cartridge which will be sold with some physical games that is actually just a digital download. Nintendo is calling this a game key card, and basically you insert that card into your Switch 2 and then you get instructions on how to download the game. There is no physical data on these cards that are downloaded to the system. And this is kind of the worst of both worlds. In fact, it's probably the worst option to buy a Nintendo Switch 2 game because you get all the downsides of a physical game and a digital game at once. So the downside for a physical game is you need the game cartridge physically in order to play the game. And with these game key cards, you need to have them in the Switch 2 to play them, even though there's no data on them. The downside of a digital game is that you're storing it on your console system storage rather than on a separate card. So I don't know why Nintendo even has these separate cards. Maybe it's because some games are so large they won't fit on the regular game cartridges, but at that point, just include a digital code in the box so you can play the games without the cartridge. I feel like that's a simple, they solved this already, Nintendo. I'm losing my mind here. Another thing Nintendo did not tell you about the Switch 2 is kind of some of the downsides of making a device larger. Namely, that would be with the weight of the Switch 2 being 1.18 pounds with the Joy-Cons connected and 0.88 pounds with just the tablet portion, which is actually the same weight as the regular Nintendo Switch with the Joy-Cons attached. So even though the Switch 2 will have the same thickness, there is a bit of added weight, making the console heavier and bigger. It's a big console. Now, one of those benefits is a large 7.9-inch display, which is a huge upgrade over the Switch's old 6.2-inch display. Now, that is great. A larger display is always nice, but one of the downsides for the Switch 2 is it's using an LCD display. Now, Nintendo says this is an HDR-capable display, so that's great, but in terms of colors, black level, contrast ratios, and just the general vibrancy of the screen, the Switch 2 is actually a downgrade from this, the Nintendo Switch OLED. So that's not something they would advertise during this presentation, but yeah, if you have an OLED Switch and you're planning to upgrade to a Switch 2 like I am, in a lot of ways, you're actually getting a worse display, which is not something you want. And of course, the biggest downgrade with making the console bigger is it's less portable. And the first Nintendo Switch was already not that portable. You kind of always need it like a separate case to carry it with you. And this new one is even bigger than that. So it is the least portable Nintendo Switch we have seen. I really miss the days of the 3DS or like the PSP where you could fit these things in your pocket. Maybe we'll get like a Switch Lite that's like the same size. It's over. It's so over for portable consoles. I mean, these are great, but I miss the old days. I miss being young. And despite it being bigger and heavier, you would think the battery life would be better, but no, the Switch 2, because of its better graphics, increased resolution, and even better frame rate, it takes quite a hit on the battery life. It can be as low as just 2 hours of gameplay, and with the max amount of battery life, you're only getting around 6.5 hours. That is compared to the regular Nintendo Switch, which has 4.5 hours all the way up to 9 hours of gameplay, so it's quite a downgrade on the Switch 2. Also, Nintendo really didn't want to show off the user interface for the Switch 2, and I was very excited to see what they would do to change the current user interface. And, it's pretty much exactly the same. I guess it doesn't matter, I mean, but you know, a new user interface would have been nice because it just makes the console feel new. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Now, by far, the biggest thing Nintendo left out of their presentation was the pricing and when you can actually order the Switch 2. So for the price of the Nintendo Switch 2, it's going to be $450, and if you get Mario Kart bundled in, it's $500, making it the most expensive Nintendo console ever. And you may want to get that bundled option because if you want to buy a game for your Nintendo Switch, it could be as high as $80. Which is insane. In fact, the prices for everything on the Nintendo Switch 2 is quite expensive. If you want a new Joy-Con, it's $89. If you want a secondary dock or a replacement for one, it's $109. And if you want the additional camera, it's another $50 on top of that. But yes, the thing I wanted to know the most, besides the very fast approaching release date of June 5th, seriously, I can't believe it's only coming out in 2 months. That's crazy. The thing I really wanted to know besides that was the pre-order date, because there is no way you're going to be able to walk into a store on June 5th and buy one without a pre-order. Well, thankfully, pre-orders are starting on April 9th for major retailers like Best Buy, GameStop, Amazon, and from Nintendo directly. And I would really recommend pre-ordering one of these if you want one on launch day, because they're probably going to be very hard to get. And if you want it as soon as possible, even some retailers like Best Buy are doing midnight releases, so that's gonna be really cool. All right, but those are all the things Nintendo did not tell you about the Nintendo Switch 2. I hope you learned something new from this video. If you did, please leave me a like. If you wanna see more, make sure you're subscribed because I have like 4 subscribers and it would be nice to have a little bit more. And hey, thank you so much for watching, and maybe I'll catch you in the next one.